This is Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome to KBLA Talk 1580. In the news today, can Donald Trump end birthright citizenship in the United States? The 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution guarantees birthright citizenship. Amending it is a very lengthy and a very difficult process. President-elect Donald Trump said he plans to end birthright citizenship in the United States in an interview with NBC's Kirsten Welker on Meet the Press episode that aired just yesterday, reiterating a position that he has articulated earlier as well. Were Trump to try to execute that plan once he takes office, it would involve undoing how the U.S. has treated citizenship for more than 150 years. But can Trump end birthright citizenship in the United States? And what happens if he does? As we do each time we get together, we begin our program by laying some groundwork for our discussion, so every day we know where we are and where we are trying to go. Immigration is no different. Our special guest today will be Alan Orr, former president of the American Immigrant Lawyers Association, the first African-American to serve in this capacity in 75 years. As you know, from 1619, when 19 scared African-Americans got off of a slave ship, Africans, in Jamestown, Virginia, it wouldn't be until the 14th Amendment in 1867 that African-Americans had citizenship rights in the United States. That long struggle from 1619 to the Declaration of Independence in 1776, to the founding of the nation itself on September 17th, 1787, to the addition of the Bill of Rights, none of these rights or laws of the Congress of the United States applied to African Americans, not until the 14th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States. And it is Donald Trump now who seeks to overturn or change or amend parts of the 14th Amendment which are largely responsible for all of the citizenship rights that African Americans enjoy. I'm glad that Alan Orr is joining us in this hour. He's the founder of the Washington, D.C. based law firm Orr Immigration Law Firm PC. The firm specializes in U.S. corporate compliance, as well as maintaining a focus on global corporate representation and assisting on immigrant-related issues. Mr. Orr has appeared on NPR, Sirius, BBC, Fox, a whole host of news mediums. From 2000 until 2010, Mr. Orr served on the National Steering Committee of the Service Members Legal Defense Network and its predecessor organization, which led the way in winning the battle to defeat the draconian Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy. Alan Orr is he is the first and the only president of African-American descent who's been the president of the American Immigrant Lawyers Association in its 75-year history. Welcome, Alan, to Jesse Jackson Jr.'s show on KBLA Talk 1580.
Happy to be with you.
Alan, can you share with us in this segment your thoughts on the history of African Americans and our relationship to the immigrant process?
Sure. I think the first thing we should all understand is that, beyond Native Americans, no one is native to this country or to this land. And so that we all came from other places. And a lot of the conversation is whether the ship stopped here or the ship stopped in Brazil or the ship stopped in the Caribbean, we all have a linkage back to the middle continent. And so to sort of divide us now in conversations about, who's a foundational Black, who's not a foundational Black, aren't the strongest sort of conversations to have, because even if your family lives in Chicago and I live in Georgia, we're still family, right? And we still have a lineage together. So sort of understanding how Black people in this country are linked to immigration, I think the most important thing to know is that without the civil rights movement, immigration today would not be what it is today. Before 1965 and the civil rights movement, Asians, Blacks, and a host of other brown people were excluded from immigration from this country. And it was people like Martin Luther King and the rest who sort of led the way for us to change our immigration policies to set up quotas that allow for different nationalities to come to this country as it is today. So it is the foundation of the civil rights movement that has brought the diversity of immigration that we have today in the different dynamics, as well as the different quotas around the world. So that's one of the things that I think a lot of people don't understand is the link between civil rights and immigration, as well as the link between Black people in this country and what migration means. So part of the migration that happened in this country also happened within the country, the Great Migration out of the South, right? After the Civil Rights Movement, a lot of people went north. And when they went north, at a time when there was high industrialization, a lot of immigrants were also coming over from Europe. And the conflict started to exist between Blacks who came from the South to do these jobs and immigrants who were coming across the sea to do these jobs. And that created some of the conflict that existed in places like Chicago, where they were building railroad tracks and other things of this competition for jobs in factories and who's going to be the manager and who's going to be the supervisor. And that sort of set up a dynamic between African Americans and European immigrants within this country of sort of going forth in this industrialization.
That's extraordinarily helpful. I often share with people and listeners on our show that with the adoption of the 14th Amendment in 1867, the Plessy versus Ferguson decision of 1896, overturning that decision with Brown versus the Board of Education, lays the foundation for the modern civil rights movement, for which African Americans primarily fought, or for which every other immigrant group in the United States and in the history of the United States has taken advantage of, is exactly why we are where we are today. The Browning of America has something to do with that. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580. When we come forward, we'll be joined with Alan Orr, one of the nation's foremost authorities on immigration, to help set the record straight on where we are.
At least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580. Are you an entrepreneur looking to take your business to new heights? KBLA Talk 1580 is your partner in success. Every day, we celebrate and elevate Black-owned businesses across our community. Our KBLA SMB Marketplace currently features The Cookie Dip, Badass Bakes, Hair Concoction, Higher Education Accreditation Consulting, LACC Radiology Technology Department, and Malik Books. Your business deserves to be heard. Let KBLA Talk 1580 amplify your voice and connect you with our powerful community of listeners. Email smb@kbla1580.com today. That's smb@kbla1580.com. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
We're with Bridget, whose husband won't be home for months, and whose daughter is due any day. We're with Mike, who's leaving home to protect his family and yours. We're with all service members and their families who need community, connection, and maybe a bit of magic. Are you with them? Learn more at uso.org today.
What's that sound? That's the sound of Downy Unstoppable scent beads going into your washing machine and giving your clothes freshness that lasts all day long. There it is again. It's like music to your ears, or more like music to your nose. That freshness is irresistible. Let's get a Downy Unstoppables bottle shake. And now a sniff solo. Nice. With Downy Unstoppables, you just toss, wash, wow, for all day freshness.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about. KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. The Los Angeles Regional Food Bank is on a mission to fight hunger and provide nutritious food to those in need across our community. They partner with federal, state, and local programs advocating for better policies and funding for critical hunger relief programs like Cal Fresh, the Emergency Food Assistance Program, and the Child and Adult Care Food Program. The food bank works with coalitions and local representatives to make sure hunger is addressed in every district of LA County. They also run nutrition education campaigns, raise hunger awareness, and source nutritious food for distribution, all while supporting regulations that allow food pantries to operate safely. Want to help? Visit lafoodbank.org or call 323-234-3030 to volunteer or find a food bank near you. Together, we can ensure that no one goes hungry in Los Angeles County. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580. Welcome forward. We are joined with our special guest, Alan Orr, former president of the American Immigrant Lawyers Association. And today we're discussing Black folk and immigration. Alan, share with us your thoughts on the current debate about immigration in the United States. The former president of the United States, has advocated across the country a mass deportation policy. And this isn't the first time that we've heard of this as African Americans. Alan, your thinking.
So first, let's get some structure behind what immigration is, because I think there may be some confusion about the lanes of immigration. So immigration is sort of divided into, there's family immigration, which really applies to immediate family, your spouse, your children, your parents, if you're a U.S. citizen. Employment, you have a sponsor from a company that's hired you for a job that will bring you in, H-1B, those sort of cap limited. Humanitarian refugee, which is a lot of what we've seen at the southern border right now for people who are coming in. They came after World War II, where we said, we're not going to let people just sort of die in these other countries. It exists. It's codified in our laws. And also the diversity visa, which is something very unique to the continent of Africa. There are a lot of people from the continent that come to the United States on diversity visas because it is such an easy threshold for them to get here on. And that's one of the key things that the Trump administration is also trying to remove out of the system are these diversity visas, which are around 50,000 a year. The concept around this mass deportation is one of saying that there are people who have been here who are undocumented, who've been here for 10 years or more. So most people in this country have been here for 10 years or more. And there is some population of people of color who are here that are undocumented from the Caribbean and also from the continent of Africa, from different places that have sort of been here for a long period of time. But the concept that a president has the authority to come into each state and remove millions of people is not very practical, because the concept that happens is when people are removed from the country, those jobs go unfilled, those rents are not paid, those children are not retrieved from school, the grocery store is not shopped in, the gas is not purchased, the car payment is not made, the insurance is not made. So sort of removing that large number of people is problematic. The only president who has ever removed over 200,000, closer to 300, 400,000 individuals is Barack Obama. And Barack Obama was removing a lot of individuals from the country during deportation in the concept of saying, if I deport these people, they will pass an immigration bill. And it just never came to fruition. He kept deporting people and Congress kept saying no, right? So the challenge that I ask for African Americans to sort of think about is immigration is linked to our survival in this country. 1 in 10 Black people in this country are either married to or are an immigrant. The only way our population will survive as a group is through immigration, because the concept of the foundational Black, or people who came who are related to slavery, is a dying number of people, and they're not having children in the same way. When you look at the diaspora of everybody else who's coming to this country, Italians, Greeks, British, French, nobody else does this thing where they say, you know, we're foundational something or whatever, and you're not included in that. People just immigrate and they become Americans and white Americans, and they just move with it. Somehow in this last election, there became a conversation with regards to what type of Black you are, which I don't think is a very good conversation to have, because once again, it's just where the ship stopped. And in that conversation, it became pitting people who were Black immigrants against people who were born in this country. Because what we have known from the statistics is that Black immigrants in general have a higher educational background than native-born Blacks.
Alan, help us understand the difference between an immigrant and, let's say, a refugee.
Sure. So immigrant is a broad category for any individual that comes to the country that's not a native of that country, right? Refugee is for someone who is outside the United States seeking to come to the United States. So refugees are in many different countries. There's a national refugee program that relocates individuals and helps bring them to different countries so that they can sort of stabilize, right? And so under the Biden administration, we got our numbers back up to around 100,000 refugees a year that we were accepting from the world. An asylum seeker is someone who is actually in the country or at the border seeking asylum. So that means that they're already within the constraint of the country. And asylum is legal under our immigration laws. Basically, it says if you come to the United States, you can apply for asylum. And if Congress wants to change that, they could do that. And therefore, then asylum would not be legal anymore. But currently, it is legal. So everything that the presidents are doing to try to change what asylum law is is not within the legal constraints of what asylum can sort of operate in, right? Because it's basically a regulation or law that Congress passed that the president signed. And if they want to change it, they need to go through the problem. And the problem is there has not been an immigration bill in 30 years. So the number of immigrants that we're accepting in the family employment realm are numbers from the 80s. So that's not modern today. And that's why a lot of individuals are sort of seeking other ways to enter the country, because those individuals, once they enter the country, are working at jobs, right? There's not 11 million people in this country unemployed, right? The undocumented people are working here. So the companies must need them. So we should figure out a way to sort of make that work rather than sort of say what we're going to do is deport them. So when President Trump this weekend on Meet the Press, Meet the Nation, whatever he said, that he was going to sort of, I think there are a couple of things I want to talk about as a lawyer here. The first one is the attack on the 14th Amendment, because the 14th Amendment is bigger than just birthright citizenship. It incorporates Black people into the Constitution. It's one of the amendments that incorporates Black people into the Constitution. And sort of changing that amendment through executive order, which I think is impossible to do without the legal constraints of the court, weakens African Americans' power within this country to claim where they are in the country, right? So that's number one.
Interesting.
Number two, without a convention for the Constitution, you can't change the 14th Amendment. And that's just beyond the power. Number three, he can't deport American citizens. There's a Supreme Court case, and I know people are going to say, oh, the Supreme Court is his now, blah, blah, blah. But there's a Supreme Court case that basically says the executive branch cannot take someone's citizenship away from them and deport them from this country. And it was a case about an Israeli who was voting in Israel, blah, blah, blah. But the answer is you just can't remove individuals from the country in that sort of same way. So that's one of the stress points. And I think part of what the power of the Trump administration is, not so much that he's going to do these things because he never built the wall. It's just to keep people in fear that something's going to happen.
Alan, let me ask you this question. As the only African-American who's ever served in your position, certainly there's some concerns that you have about Africans, Caribbeans, South Americans being deported in the Trump regime because of their color and the way in which the statutes, particularly Title 42, has been interpreted that really looks like sending Black people and brown people back to their countries of origin. Share with us your concerns about that.
So I was on the ground with Title 42, and part of the concern was that there was no safe place for Black people, right? They were keeping them in Mexico, and Mexico is not safe. Is not safe for a lot of Black people because it has the same racism that sort of exists. And even when there was a large influx of Haitians that came from Chile and other places who changed their regimes, right? They had the Haitians there, they were working, then their economy fell apart, and then they were like, get out, right? And then those Haitians came to the United States, and the United States was like, we're going to send you back to Haiti. But they haven't been to Haiti in such a long time that it didn't really make sense. So the plan is for cruelty. A lot of the families that were separated, and there's a movie on MSNBC called Separated now that sort of discussed that, were Black people. And I don't think people realize that it was Congolese people who were separated. They were separated from their families. These were Black children who were taken from their families, as well as a lot of the things that happen in detention centers were done to Black women. This experimentation with ovaries and giving people these different type of surgeries. Those were Black women. That was a Black nurse in Atlanta who came out and said, they're doing this thing to Black immigrants. They're sterilizing Black immigrants. The concern beyond the humanitarian sort of concept of it and beyond the concept that we're Americans and we should do these things is that if they will do that to them, they will do that to you, because there is no distinguishing factor between a native-born Black person and a Black immigrant when you see them on the street in appearance. And that's the problem with this sort of mass deportation. They're going to go to the Black communities. And sure, they're going to get some Black immigrants, but they also are going to get some Black people who might have drugs or something else, sort of much this catch and flinch where they just sort of catch everybody in the circle. So that's the concern, is that they're going to devastate a lot of communities of color in sort of having this mass deportation, saying that we're going after immigrants, but using that as a ploy to go after and get everything else.
Yeah, that's one of the things that particularly irks me about Donald Trump's approach, which isn't surgical. It's more like a butcher, right?
That's right.
I mean, how do you conduct mass deportation without racial profiling? And I don't know why it is that some naturalized citizens think that they won't have to show their driver's license, show their birth certificates, just because their surnames may represent something south of the border,
sure.
And constantly have to go through some kind of racial profiling process. Should those Americans express some concerns and have concerns about the Trump policy?
Sure, absolutely. Every American should have some concern. I think, as we know, as we move towards May and Real ID becomes a real thing, after these years of delay, and saying that you won't be able to go into a government building or fly domestically on an airplane without having a Real ID, which is a passport or an official state ID that says you are a citizen and all of the things with regards to it. So there are a lot of people who you may or may not realize this in the South, who are older Black people who don't have birth certificates, never had a birth certificate, right? Never needed one, right? They weren't born in a hospital. They were born at home. And these are the people who are going to be disenfranchised from being able to go into federal buildings because they're not going to have the appropriate ID. And so, or the sort of stance to show that they're Americans. And that's really the conversation I'm having a lot of time with older Black people, is to make sure that if you don't have your passport, then you do have a state issued ID that's a real ID, so that you can go in the government building to see about your Medicaid, your Medicare, your Social Security, whatever it is, because you won't be able to get in there anymore after this Real ID goes into effect in May. Or if you're rounded up in some situation and you have been in the country for years, there are tons of people in New York City who still have accents, who are from Jamaica or from Haiti or wherever. You want to have your ID and your paperwork in order so that you have a passport to say, yeah, I'm a U.S. citizen, so that you don't wind up being deported, as they did under Eisenhower, where they deported a lot of people to countries that they did not belong to. And you had to fight your way back. You had to claw your way back to the United States. That's a very difficult thing to do.
Alan, share with us the contribution that immigrants make to the American economy and why the president's efforts may be foolhardy.
Yeah, so the contributions that immigrants make right now, if we sort of think about the immigrant population, they're much younger than the American population, right? They're younger than the baby boomers. So the immigrant populations are the individuals who are now paying into Social Security, right? Because we know that you pay Peter to pay Paul in that way. And so when you remove that class of individuals, that working class of people, you have a problem of, one, not having people young enough to work in these jobs that you need, as well as not having people paying into the Social Security system to sort of pay out. For Black people, what I think is important to know is that a lot of the Nigerians, right? Last year, Nigerians were the highest educated individuals in this country, period, right? Their doctorate degrees, they were medical professionals that were much higher than the rest of the world, right? Your Indian nationals, all the other nationals around the world. So that level of brain drain that comes from the world, I will say it is a brain drain, but that level of excellence in this country that goes into things like making the COVID vaccine or solving some other health problems specific to Black people is very unique and a very desired talent to have, because a lot of these doctors who come over wind up going to underserved neighborhoods in the United States and working there to help communities of color or people who have economic disadvantages, so to be able to have a doctor.
One of the crowning achievements of my service in the Congress of the United States was creating the Office of Minority Research at NIH, elevating it to a national center, and then elevating it to a national institute for the purposes of being able to provide research dollars to the very scientists, the doctors, the nurses who serve in these underserved communities that you speak of. And so immigrants bring a richness to our culture. They also bring a tax base and to our culture. They are real contributors to the American experience and the American dream.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, without them right now, the system would totally fall apart. The only reason we made it through COVID in the way that we did is because of immigrants. Immigrants were the ones doing those essential jobs. They carried our economy through COVID.
My thoughts continue to plague me over this, because last week on the program, we had Dr. Ron Daniels, who shared with us the contributions of Haitian Americans to the history of the United States, from the Revolutionary War through the Louisiana Purchase, through the contributions that they continue to make, and then the way in which they were treated in the presidential campaign, particularly in Springfield, Ohio, and other cities across our country. There is this sense that the immigrant crisis is about Black and brown people. I don't sense this is about Italians or Europeans or Germans. I feel like it's about our brown brothers and sisters south of the border. I feel like it's about Africa. I feel like it's about us. Tell me, Attorney Orr, are my feelings out of place?
Well, it's always been foundation that way. Racism is prevalent everywhere. And even before there was a Trump, there still was racism within deportation and immigration policies, and that Black people found the dark end of all of those sort of spectrums. So yes, it's very true. And it is also very true that in any world, when you want to create a boogeyman, you want that boogeyman to be something that you think is bad. And so therefore, that's why you have the boogeyman of what? The Venezuelan gangs, the Haitian eating your pets. You pick these people and you demonize them to be something that they're not, when there are tons of people who are Venezuelan and tons of people who are Haitian who are nowhere near having that type of capacity. And yet you only choose to find that anomaly and sort of go in that fashion.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580. When we come forward, we will be joined and continue the conversation with Alan Orr, our nation's foremost authority on immigration from the perspective of people of color.
You're riding with Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Tyreek Wynn with 4 things you should know from BIN News. The war of words continues between Jay-Z and a Texas attorney, Tony Busby. Busby represents a woman who claims to have been sexually assaulted by both the rap mogul and Sean Diddy Combs during an MTV Video Music Awards after party. American Airlines is officially suspending its daily flights between Miami and Port-au-Prince, Haiti, until further notice. The FAA suspended the service for 90 days after an American flight was hit by a bullet while departing from an international airport back in Haiti in November. College enrollment is down 5% among 18-year-olds this fall semester. According to the National Student Clearinghouse Research Center, the decline is higher in both public and private four-year colleges. Taco Bell is asking people to say cheese at the select drive-thrus across the country. The Live Moz drive-thru cam launched this week and lets Taco Bell rewards members get pictures taken inside their vehicle. Get BIN News on demand 24/7 at BINnews.com.
It's a crash in Atwater Village on the 2 southbound before Fletcher Drive. The 3 left lanes are blocked and delays are pushing back all the way from Verdugo Road. Also, let's head out to Hollywood. This is the drive on the 101. Slowing start southbound at just about Sunset Boulevard all the way into downtown Los Angeles. Northbound delays from Santa Monica Boulevard and stretches towards White Oak and Encino. Burbank on the 134, making your way eastbound. The drive is slow moving away from Riverside Drive as you continue ahead all the way to Glendale Avenue in Glendale. And Pasadena, 210 eastbound, delays from Mountain all the way to Citrus. Tough in Riverside. This is on the 215 northbound. It's called that Moreno Valley. Delays from leaving Alessandro, and you're on the brakes ahead to the 10 in Loma Linda.
Pro Paint Days are back at Lowe's. Get your choice of 5-gallon pails of Valspar Signature Ceiling Paint or HGTV Home by Sherwin-Williams Flat Ceiling Paint for just $148. Lowe's knows paint. Lowe's knows pros. Valid through 12/20.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Of the 12 schools selected for the NCAA Division I college football playoffs, only 2 have a black head coach. James Franklin at Penn State and Marcus Freeman at Notre Dame. Franklin is in his 10th season at Penn State. The 52-year-old Franklin is the first black head coach in Division I to reach 100 career wins. In 2016, he was the first black head football coach to win the Big Ten Conference Championship. Penn State, 11-2 this season, has a first-round game against Southern Methodist on December 21st. The 38-year-old Freeman is in his 3rd year at Notre Dame. Notre Dame, 11-1 this season, plays Indiana in a first-round game on December 20th. The Black College Football National Championship will be decided this Saturday at Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. Jackson State takes on South Carolina State in the Celebration Bowl. Live coverage on ABC at 9 a.m. Pacific Time. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
Yeah, y'all, come on. Come to
At KBLA Talk 1580, we fight the power every day.
Yeah,
gotta give us what we want.
Gotta give us what we need. Hey.
I listen to KBLA and I love the commercials. I know what the commercials mean. I also, if I'm looking and trying to figure something out, I need something to talk to me that might hit me. And it happens on TV because, you know, every time they show a sporting event, they got the pharmaceutical companies back to back telling people how to fix the sickness on the same stuff that they sell them. So we get it.
Yep, we get it too, Chucky. And that's why at KBLA Talk 1580, we don't black down.
Drop it! Our freedom of speech is freedom of death. We got to fight the powers that be. Fight the power! Fight the power! Fight the power!
You're listening to KBLA Talk 1580, where climate is king. Climate is king.
This season, Chevy brings classic pairings, cookies and milk, mistletoe and kisses, and your holiday plans and a new Chevy. Silverado 1500 gives you power and capability with 430 pound-feet of torque to haul your holiday tree. The Equinox EV and all-new Equinox, America's best compact SUV for new vehicle quality by J.D. Power, offer both confidence and style to see you through the holiday season. It's easy to see why Chevy makes everything better and brighter. Find your red tag. Get 0% APR financing for 36 months on select popular Chevy models when you finance with GM Financial. Chevrolet. Together, let's drive. Award based on 2024 models. For J.D. Power 2024 U.S. Initial Quality Study award information, visit jdpower.com/awards. Offer available on all 2025 Equinox and 2024 Equinox EV, Blazer EV, and Silverado EV models. Monthly payment is $27.78 for every $1,000 you finance. Example down payment is 26.8%. Must finance with GM Financial. Some customers may not qualify. Not available with lease and some other offers. Take new retail delivery by 1/2/25.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. If you need help getting your resume in order, finding job training, or landing a job, we've got 3 great options for you. First, the City of Los Angeles has WorkSource centers across the area offering free job support. The California Workforce Development Board can help you with everything from GED prep to vocational training at no cost to you. On the federal level, the Department of Labor's American Job Centers offer a full range of services for job seekers and businesses alike. Visit careeronestop.org, or for more info, just call California's Help Center or visit cwdb.ca.gov or call 916-657-1440. For the City of Los Angeles programs, go to ewdd.lacity.gov or call 213-744-7300. All these services are free to help you get your next job. This is a community call to action from KB.
Welcome back. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580, and I'm joined in this hour with Alan Orr, the nation's foremost African-American authority on immigration, and not just from our perspective, but from the perspective of all Americans. He knows the history. He's really, really clear on where we are. Alan, let me shift, if you don't mind, to the politics for a moment.
Sure.
This doesn't feel like it's going to get any better over the next 2 years or over the next 4 years. It feels like it's going to get worse. I think the better angels of our nature as Americans, we're not going to see that over this period of history and over this period and during this administration, whether it's cages for people on the southern border or rounding up people of color in urban areas with mayors trying to defend decisions that they've made. What does the future for immigration in this country look like? And what does the future of our response and resistance to the treatment of our brothers and sisters, refugees, migrants, immigrants, who just yearning to breathe free, come to our country? What should we expect?
A lot of court gridlock. I mean, unfortunately, that's the reality that we're in right now. And hopefully the courts will hold as they did the last time with regards to, DACA, which is children, undocumented children that came to the country that was created by Obama, has been in the federal courts for almost 15 years. So having an understanding of how the federal courts play a role in checking executive power is super important in this constraint. Also relying on the precedent of the Supreme Court. And while we don't lean on that heavily, there is a lot of precedents on the Supreme Court with regards to due process for someone who's being removed from the country. So you just can't remove them instantly. And also with regards to citizenship. Amy Coney Barrett has surprised me a little bit with regards to some of the things that she's done and said from the bench. Not to say that she's not getting any cookies, but still she's been sort of leaning toward the middle a little bit more so than I thought she would be as a judge. So that's there. Legislative gridlock is another thing to sort of look at. The problem with immigration is Congress, not the president. It's Congress that has the budget to make more judges, to figure out where the money is allocated for a wall, to get more people in places to adjudicate cases, or to modernize the law. And since Congress is failing to do their job and has failed to do their job for 30 years, if Congress doesn't act, then that's the problem. In every election cycle, we hear immigration, immigration, immigration. Well, do something about it. Change the rules. Pass a bill. Get something. That is the way to actually operate in immigration, not through some executive power, so that something is final and something is clear in the regulations to sort of go forward. In addition, the thing that I think is important that people realize now is this AI is the new sort of thing in immigration enforcement that exists in all of these cities and airports, where people are constantly, without you maybe even knowing, scanning your identity and seeing where you are. So they're going to be able to track individuals through this new AI technology. And Tom Homan has already said that they're going to sort of use that to sort of go forward and sort of, so there's going to be a lot of enforcement. For Black people, for voters, period, you have Tom Homan, backed by the president, who basically said, we're going to deport people at all cost, right? There's no budget for this. We're just going to do it. How is that possible in a world where there's no health care? There's no money for schools. There's no money for bridges. How can you possibly sit and say, we're going to deport people at all costs? Doesn't quite sit well with me to hear that there's no limitation on the budget with regards to this, and that it's not with regards to safety, because, you know, while there are some occasions in which immigrants may be involved in a crime, it's a much lower rate than people who are born here natively. And also, there is just not this rampant influx from immigrants causing problems everywhere all the time.
I see the obviously the Congress of the United States, with Democrats in the minority, aren't going to have the I believe the legislative strength to create, unless some bipartisan group emerges outside of the resistance to Trump's mass deportation policies. I don't see any relief from the courts. So at some point in time, these matters, I think, are going to return to the streets and how we treat our neighbors. What do we do when Donald Trump and or the Congress actually threaten corporations to lay off immigrants, to make your employees prove their citizenship? When someone wants to cut my grass or provide basic services that I could be penalized as a citizen for hiring or paying someone to do a service that traditionally is performed under the existing economy, and now I find myself in a position where I have to call ICE if there's someone in my neighborhood. How troubling is that for you as an immigration lawyer?
So it's very troubling. I mean, you know, part of my job is helping companies decide who has appropriate work authorization. So, I mean, I do believe in that we're a system of law and people do need work authorization. It should be plentiful and made available to these companies. I also believe General Walker, who is at the Department of Justice, has done a great job of sort of being great in enforcing and finding companies who have not followed the procedures the correct way, because that's part of the issue, right? If these companies were fined in such a way that the people who were working there were either paid appropriately and they were fined for not having the right work authorization, then immigration laws would change because they would need those workers. And hospitality is a prime example of where you really need these workers. Agriculture, farming, right? You really need these workers. So companies will sort of have that meat packing plants. I would like to believe that companies would stand up for those individuals, but they won't. And we already saw this happen in 2019 when they raided a plant in Mississippi, a meatpacking plant in Mississippi, and they caught around 265 Chinese nationals who basically were doing the dirtiest work in the United States. They broke them away from their children, unearthed the whole society and the community. So part of what the impetus from us is to try to say, let's make sure whatever happens is humane and that we follow due process. Those are number one, humane, and that it follows due process. 3, make sure that people know their rights. Right? If someone shows up to your house and if they don't have a warrant, if they only have an administrative warrant, you don't have to let them in. So read the warrant, understand what the warrant means in all cases, but you have to let someone in. If someone asks you about your citizenship and your nationality, know what questions you're answering and know that you don't have to answer questions, right? That's just one of the things that's true. And get a lawyer in all cases. You don't have to answer questions. So we are arming people with the understanding of what their rights are. We're also mobilizing people to lean on Congress, because what you said, something is super important. Everybody has somebody in their family right now who's undocumented, somebody who's cutting the hair, doing the lawn, doing the kitchen. In time when you were back in Congress, if you had a Lonnie Grenier problem, you had one undocumented person, you weren't going to be able to solve it, work in Congress anymore. But today, it's prevalent everywhere. Somebody married to somebody in the family. It's just impossible for me to imagine that you just don't. You either don't know and don't care, but there are people that are there. So that constraint of reality of these individuals and who they are people next to us. Because I think the other thing is that we should remember that when we're looking at people, we're not looking at their immigration status. We're looking at other human beings, and we want them to be treated the way that we want to be treated. And after they're done with the immigrants in this case, because the thing about eating the dogs and cats in Springfield is the very same thing they said about Black people when they came out of the South, right? That they were eating all these things, they were stealing all these things. They're less than because they're doing all this kind of other stuff. So that's just the reality. Once they're done with them, they're going to be on to you. So you need to stand and hold the line firm with regards to humanity and human rights. We have laws in this country, and if someone violated the law, then let's take them through the due process through the system. One of the things that we don't have in immigration is a statute of limitation. In every other area of law, we have a statute of limitation. So if you don't do something within 7 years or 10 years, then it just goes away. Immigration needs a statute of limitation. If you have been here for 10 years, paying taxes, doing whatever notoriously here, and you haven't been deported, then you need to just be able to stay because the government doesn't care. Because if they would have cared, they would have got rid of you. And that's just the way I feel about it.
When we come forward, we're going to ask Alan Orr whether or not scaring the Canadians with tariffs and scaring Mexican leadership with tariffs can solve this problem. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580 when we come forward.
At least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
Why pay more for prescriptions? Stop overpaying and start saving with SingleCare. It's easy. Find your prescription on singlecare.com, show the coupon at the pharmacy, and start saving. SingleCare works at pharmacies nationwide and is completely free to use, whether you have insurance or not. So the next time you fill a prescription, check SingleCare to make sure you're getting the best price. Take control of your prescription costs. Go to singlecare.com or download the free app today.
You've got a Pepto predicament, Festive Feaster.
Who wants another slice of Grammy's famous pumpkin pie?
I
do not. I think I need to lay down for a minute.
You overdid it on all the family favorites, and now your stomach's throwing a Yuletide tantrum. Undo it with Pepto-Bismol.
When you have nausea, heartburn, indigestion, upset stomach, diarrhea.
Pepto chewables provide fast 5-symptom relief, so you can get back to the feast and the festivities.
Who's ready for some games?
When you overdo it, undo it with Pepto. Use as directed. Keep out of reach of children.
Tips to help improve basic steps for building a budget in 2024. Building a budget can help you achieve and reach your financial goals. With a budget, you can keep track of your spending, avoid and get out of debt, limit overspending, pay bills on time, and build solid savings habits. What's the best way to get started? Figure out how much to set aside for expenses like rent, mortgage, bills, groceries, and entertainment. Understanding your past financial habits can help you make the proper adjustments for your budget. Adjusting to a budget can take time as you work to find the right balance, but keep working on it. For more financial health tips, visit chase.com or stop by a local branch. This segment is sponsored by JP Morgan Chase & Company.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Imagine a Los Angeles where everyone can thrive, where communities have access to the resources they need to succeed. That's the vision of Detours Mentoring Group, Inc. They're dedicated to improving life in LA County by providing educational support, employment assistance, and spaces for community engagement. By 2050, they want LA to be the best place to connect, create, learn, live, and play. They're working toward an education system that's well-resourced and culturally responsive, becoming a hub for artists and innovators, and making sure everyone has access to healthy food, quality healthcare, and safe housing. It's about building a future where we all have the chance to succeed. We invite you to learn more about their mission and get involved with Detours Mentoring Group, Inc. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580. We are joined with the nation's foremost authority on immigrant, Alan Orr. Alan, welcome back. Alan's a graduate at Morehouse College. He got his JD from Howard University. Alan, share with us a little bit about your path to HBCUs and then to be an immigration lawyer.
Sure. I think so. Right now, I tell all people who are capable or able to send your kid to an HBCU because it changes their perspective of life, specifically with the history. I went to a PWI high school where there might have been, I don't know, We were a very small minority. There might be 30 people in my graduating class of 600 people that were actually people of color. But then when I went to Morehouse, I was a Republican at the time, and I was educated on the foundation of history of the world, not just American history, and exposed to different thinkers that helped broaden my horizon, that led me to be majored in philosophy. And that made me select, at the time when I got ready to go to law school, I said, I don't want to go to another school where I'm just another number. And that's what led me to Howard University. And at Howard, it was always about social justice, and it still is today, that it wasn't about going to school to make a lot of money. It was about going to school to change the way that people live, to be social engineers. And while in law school, I did really well in the immigration course, and a firm offered me a job. And then I got the golden handcuffs that I sort of led in for like 12 years before I was able to go out on my own. Because, once again, even with the golden handcuffs, you're always in that circle of saying, you're just not good enough to be partner yet. You're just not good enough to be partner yet. You're just not good enough to be partner yet. And then I remember something, I could make myself partner. And so that's what I sort of did in that world, and sort of excluded from that world. And the other thing in that sort of space of finding immigration was that I realized that there were not a lot of people, not a lot of Black people who were working in this immigration space, when there were a lot of Black immigrants who needed someone to sort of be there for them and represent them. And it made me feel empowered to be someone who was born in this country, to be able to talk on immigrant issues from a Black perspective, and to be able to know racism and microaggressions in immigration court that other attorneys didn't see because they are just not Black, and they couldn't sort of see those microaggressions in those ways. So in doing that, it's what got me really involved in our immigration bar. And at the time, there were no Black lawyers who had been presidents of this organization. And I thought to myself, well, then if there aren't any, then I'm going to be the first, but I'm not going to be the last. And that's sort of where I sort of started on that. It took me a good 15 years to be president of that organization, because they thought I was going to be radical. There's tons of reasons why people were sort of like apprehensive, but I think it was good for everybody to be able to go through that experience, and for us to sort of have a representation of a Black face in this space.
That's the exact same path that I followed at North Carolina A&T State University. I went to the PWI, found my space at North Carolina A&T, made some adjustments, went to the seminary, went to law school, and I found my voice in the context of the African-American experience. Before the break, I asked you the question, can we scare the Canadians into doing something about immigration by using tariffs? Can we scare the Mexicans into building a wall or stopping the refugee crisis at the border by using tariffs? Your thoughts?
So factually, border crossings at an all-time low. Hasn't been this low since 2019, I think, is the number that sort of came through. So that's a side point. To just say tariffs are taxes on the American people. And anyone who ever had an economic class should realize that, sure, throw as many tariffs as you want. It's just going to wind up hurting the United States people more. And that's why you've seen these Fortune 100 companies basically already come out. I mean, forget the Fortune 100 companies. Think about the Dollar Tree and Dollar General, who's already came out and said, basically, you need to buy this stuff now, because if these tariffs happen, it's going to be more expensive, and we're not going to be able to keep these prices at that sort of price point. So we're at a point now where Americans are in the find out stage of how unsophisticated this presidency may be with regards to these tariffs. One of the things that I don't think people realize, and I do because I work in immigration, is there was a time when we made things in this country. We made jeans and we made stuff, and now we don't make anything in this country. We don't make TVs. We don't make cars. Here they might be assembled here. We don't make cars here. We don't make televisions here. We don't make washers and dryers here, right? We don't make jeans or shirts or pants here. This concept of these factories that were producing so much stuff during here just doesn't exist anymore. So we have coal mines and things like that still exist, but the safety of those things is sort of limited, and all those things have moved to other countries. So we export and import a lot of that stuff back to us, right? That's one of the biggest things that sort of happens in Haiti. Haiti has a lot of these factory mills for Gap and other places where they're doing all this sewing and stuff for $1 a day or $1 a week type stuff, where it works out to be in their currency. So I think that it is a misgauged opportunity. And I think that part of what the Trump administration is going to do is going to shoot itself in the foot with regards to these tariffs, and also with regards to immigration, because it's going to wind up everything costing more.
Does building a wall solve the problem?
So there has never been a wall that existed that someone could not go around, go over, or go underneath. So it's sort of a foolish thing. And so I think that people in their minds think that we are England or somewhere, that our size is very small. But the United States is a huge, we could put all of Europe into the United States several times. So to build a border at that capacity and for it to remain there with all the things just doesn't work well for the environment, for the cost, right? We see people already going through the border or underneath the border before, right? We saw the tunnel that the guy had between Mexico and the United States. So it's just not a practical use. There may be places where a wall may be practical to help in some cases, but it's not an answer.
So Alan Orr is advising probably not this president of the United States, but a future president of the United States on a thoughtful, humane immigration and border policy. What does it sound like?
Yeah, so I will be working with the Trump administration again, right? I've worked with the ICE guy, Tom Homan, in the past. And so, I mean, even if it falls on deaf ear, you would hope good suggestions follow in any place. So one of the things that we sort of say is a good thing in this sort of humane system is to say, if you've been here for 10 years or more, here's the fine, you pay it, we put you in the system, and we'll get you someplace at some point in time, right? We let people come out of the shadows and sort of pull themselves forward. Ronald Reagan did it before. It had happened before in the past. It's not amnesty. It's more of equity. People have been here a long time. Justification sort of answers. We look at our immigration system and say, wait a minute, excuse me, that our family system is on the 80s. We need to bring it up to date. We need to bring it up to speed. Our employment system is sort of outdated. We need to bring it up to speed. Our system is outdated. We need to bring it up to speed. And one of the things that I think that is interesting to me is that we set ourselves on this beacon of saying we're the world's greatest, we're the smartest, but we're scared of every third country national from wherever they're from, right? We're scared of these Muslims. We're scared of this person or that person. That one person is going to come and do something. That doesn't speak to me about the technology and the advantages that we have. If our advantages are so weak that one person from some country in the Middle East with not this level of technology is going to come and tear it down. And that's sort of a straw man argument that we tell ourselves over and over and over again, that someone's coming, that the concept of the foreigner is that someone's coming to hurt you, when in fact, historically, it has been the exact opposite.
Your thoughts about the Haitian crisis, about the Caribbean crisis, about climate change and its impact on immigration at this hour?
Yeah, so the climate one is a book. I can't even begin to express how many climate migrants are going to be and how we participate in that over time. What's happening in Haiti right now is what's happening in Haiti, Sudan, and the Congo. And Sudan and Congo may be beyond our hemisphere, but Haiti specifically in our hemisphere, is that, you know, there was a flood there today. I think 12 people died. Before the flood, one of the gang leaders' barbecue killed 110 elderly people, one of the outskirts of a city in Haiti. And for me, and the Kenyans are there on the ground, but the United States is doing nothing. And it's sort of weird to me in the situation where we care so much about stability within our region, and that it opens up an opportunity for China and Russia to move into that place, right? And all the guns, this is the most important thing, all the guns that are in Haiti come from the United States, right? Guns are not manufactured in Haiti at all, nor is ammunition. That stuff's coming from Miami. And if we could stop that, we could stop the gangs. So apparently, France sent 4 troops, four tanks to Haiti, which may help in some way. But at this level, the Haitian population is dying in the major city, and there just needs to be a better way to sort of a better humane way of addressing that. And while I don't think that Biden has been the great, I mean, there has been, his ambassador to Haiti was not great. The situation in Haiti with the prime ministers has not been great. I don't know if the United States has a stability role to play there outside of the UN of sort of saying, we're going to make sure that it's stable now, because every time the United States has touched Haiti, it has left it worse than it was when they went in. And that's just the reality of it.
Yeah, my biggest concern is that African nations like Kenya, but other nations in a multilateral force could do more to stabilize Haiti. It's just that they're so far from Haiti that it almost begs the question, why the United States, given the history of the role that the Haitian community has played in supporting us during the revolution, during the Louisiana Purchase, during the expansion of our country to the Western states, why the United States would turn its back on the Haitian people at this hour is nothing short of a tragedy. Let me ask you a final question. Sure. Do you see any hope for the passage of bipartisan legislation in the Congress to address this issue that could get support in the Senate and ultimately be signed by the president-elect of the United States?
Yeah, so there was a bill that just recently that, there's a bill that Biden pushed through that was an enforcement only type bill. Wasn't crazy about it. But I think that bill may be resurrected for this president to sign within the first couple, and may get some passage there. I think the Democrats ignored the immigration conversation. They didn't hit it front on, and they didn't know the fears that people sort of felt day to day, and they didn't know how much they needed someone to be a scapegoat. What I want people to understand who are in Chicago or any of the large cities where there was an influx of immigrants from Texas and other places was that if you have unlimited resources to deport people, you have unlimited resources to feed people or to clothe people, that those are options that are chosen by the people that were elected. And if an immigrant did receive something, food, housing, whatever, it isn't the immigrant taking something from you. It is the elected official who delegated something to them from you. So that's a political choice. So to look at an immigrant who walked 1,000 miles for an opportunity to live a better life and say to you that they're taking something from you is just a weird proposition for me. And I just don't think that people understand that in all of these scenarios, the person who's the scapegoat is not the problem. It's the elected officials that are the problem, who are making decisions with regards to where these monies are being allocated. And that's where we need to start addressing the problem.
Alan Orr, our very special guest on KBLA Talk 1580. Grateful for your service, grateful for your witness, and grateful for the extraordinary work that you have provided for us in the Caribbean, in the world, and beyond. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580. When we come forward, we'll be joined by Jonathan Wilson Hartgrove, and we'll talk about white poverty.